You can have a job, people who care about you, a place to live, and plans for the weekend. Nothing is falling apart. And still, somewhere between waking up, making coffee, going to work, answering messages, and doing it all again the next day, a strange question can appear. Is this really where my life is supposed to be going? That's what makes feeling lost so difficult to explain. When something is obviously wrong, you know what needs your attention. But what do you do when your life looks fine from the outside and somehow doesn't feel right from the inside? Maybe the problem isn't that you have no direction. Maybe you have too many. When you're young, life comes with a map. You don't call it that, but it's there. Finish this grade, pass this exam, graduate, choose what to study, find a job, get better at it. For years, someone is always telling you what comes next. There are deadlines, scores, applications, milestones. Even uncertainty has boundaries. You may not know exactly what your future looks like, but you usually know what you're supposed to do on Monday morning. Then something changes. You become an adult, and slowly, almost without noticing, the map runs out. There is no next grade, no universal exam, no syllabus explaining what a good 30-year-old is supposed to have accomplished by December. Nobody hands you a sheet of paper that says, "Congratulations, from here, you're on your own." So you begin making choices: where to live, what work to do, who to love, whether to stay, whether to leave, whether to build something, whether to start again. And these decisions are different from the ones that came before, because now there often isn't a clearly correct answer. There are simply different lives.
That's where things get complicated, because modern life gives us access to an extraordinary number of possible futures. You could move somewhere else, change careers, start a company, go back to school, travel, settle down, earn more, work less, build a family, live alone, chase status, reject status. And on your phone, you can watch people doing every one of those things before you've even finished breakfast. Someone your age just got promoted. Someone else quit their job and moved across the world. Someone bought a house. Someone launched a business. Someone got married. Someone ran a marathon. Someone seems to have found their purpose. And each life, viewed separately, may be perfectly reasonable. The problem begins when you compare your life with all of them at once. Suddenly, you're not just wondering whether your career is right. You're wondering why you don't have their career, their relationship, their freedom, their body, their apartment, their confidence, their certainty. You're comparing one life, your life, against the highlights of hundreds of different lives. And it's possible to feel behind in all of them.
This creates a strange kind of confusion, because maybe you genuinely want some of those things. Maybe you do want more meaningful work. Maybe you do want financial security. Maybe you want adventure. Maybe you want a family. Maybe you want freedom. But wanting each of those things individually doesn't mean they all point in the same direction. A career opportunity might bring more money, but less time. Moving somewhere exciting might mean leaving people you love. Building something ambitious might require years of uncertainty. Choosing stability may close the door on a different kind of life. And that's the part we rarely talk about. Every meaningful choice creates something, but it also removes something. Choosing one future means allowing other possible futures to disappear. You can choose a good career and still wonder about the career you didn't choose. You can love the city where you live and still imagine the person you might have become somewhere else. You can make a good decision and still feel the weight of the doors it closed. That doesn't necessarily mean you chose incorrectly. It means choices are real.
And maybe that's why being an adult can feel strangely heavy even when your life is going well. You aren't only living the life you chose, you're also aware of the lives you didn't choose. The job you didn't take, the city you never moved to, the person you didn't become, the interests you kept postponing because something else seemed more practical. There will always be another version of your life that looks interesting from a distance. And if your goal is to become completely certain that you've chosen the best possible one, you may wait forever, because certainty would require knowing what every other road would have become. You can't know that. So maybe the goal isn't to find the perfect life. Maybe it isn't even to discover one final answer to the question, what should I do with my life? Maybe the better question is smaller.
Not where exactly am I supposed to end up, but which direction feels worth moving toward from here.
Sometimes the life you didn't choose becomes more attractive precisely because you never had to live it. You imagine the career you could have taken, but not the difficult mornings that would have come with it. You imagine the city you could have moved to, but not the loneliness, the rent, the unfamiliar routines, or the ordinary Tuesdays. You imagine the relationship that might have worked, the business you might have started, the person you might have become. But imagined lives have an unfair advantage. They don't contain traffic. They don't contain bills. They don't contain boring meetings, bad moods, uncertainty, or dishes waiting in the sink. Your real life has to compete against possibilities that have never been tested by reality, and reality will almost always look messier. This is why feeling uncertain doesn't automatically mean you're on the wrong path. Sometimes you're simply comparing the full version of the life you're living with an edited version of the lives you never lived. There is another trap here too. We often assume that somewhere out there is a version of ourselves who made all the right decisions, the right career, the right city, the right relationship, the right financial choices, the right use of time. And if we could somehow discover what that person would have done, everything would finally make sense. But that person doesn't exist. Every version of you would have gained something and given something up. Every road would have contained opportunities. Every road would have contained problems. Every life would eventually become ordinary from the inside. So the question isn't, which possible life contains no regret? There probably isn't one. A better question might be, which regrets am I willing to accept in exchange for the things I care about? Because a meaningful life isn't necessarily a life with trade-offs. It may simply be a life where the trade-offs are connected to something you actually value. And once you understand that, you can stop asking life for something it was never able to give you. Perfect certainty.
A map and a compass solve different problems. A map says, here is your destination. Here is the road. Follow it. A compass doesn't promise any of that. It doesn't tell you what you'll encounter. It doesn't tell you how long the journey will take. It doesn't guarantee you've chosen the easiest path. It simply helps you recognize direction. And maybe that's a better way to think about a life. Not, where exactly am I supposed to end up, but what direction do I want my life to move toward? Toward more independence, more connection, more curiosity, more mastery, more stability, more adventure, more contribution, more time with people you love. Those directions can lead to many different destinations, and that's precisely the point. You don't have to predict your entire future to know that you want more of something that matters.
There are a few questions that can help make that direction clearer. Not because they'll reveal some hidden destiny, they won't, but because they remove some of the noise. The first is, what would I want more of in my life if nobody else could see it? No post, no title, no applause, no one impressed by the answer. What would still matter? That's a useful question because some goals survive invisibility, others don't. The second question is harder. What am I pursuing mostly because it makes me look successful? Not everything we want because other people value it is bad. Recognition matters. Money matters. Status can matter. But it's worth knowing when the audience has quietly become the author. And then there's a third question. Imagine nothing significant about your current life changes for 5 years. Same kind of work?
You probably don't need to rebuild your entire life tomorrow. Most meaningful changes don't begin that way. They begin smaller. One evening protected for something you've kept postponing, one conversation you've been avoiding, one application sent, one class tried, 1 hour spent making something instead of watching someone else live. A direction becomes useful when it changes what you do next. And you may still doubt yourself. You may still compare. You may still wonder whether another road would have been better. That's okay. The goal was never to eliminate uncertainty. The goal is to stop demanding certainty before you're willing to move. Maybe nothing is wrong with your life. Maybe what feels wrong is that you've been waiting for a map when what you actually need is a compass. You don't have to know exactly where your life is going.
You just need a direction worth taking the next step toward.